fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football and a special edition of the a mock draft 3.0 after the Russell Wilson trade, after essentially the first week of free agency. And welcome in, Keith. Fun show ahead.
Oh, these are some of my favorite shows. So we're doing it a little differently this time than last time. Last time we went through and had a draft simulator up, and we made the picks one by one as they came. This time, Bill and I have each pre-done our own mock draft on the same simulator, and now we can come in and talk about the players that we picked.
Yeah, the players, the strategy on what we decided to do. That's kind of the big thing. Like, how do you strategically go after the players and position groups that you think that you need, get the maximized value, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty interesting. We ended up similar in the types of players we chose overall and kind of the basic trade back strategy. I think, as you'll see at the very end, I think Keith came out slightly ahead, but when you take a look at the individual players, it's pretty even. And the reason that we did this today is that so we could take have a conversation about the maximum amount of players that we could, because that's at this time of the year, the more we talk about, maybe we have a chance to hit on some of these guys. These are pretty well sea hockey type players. I think these are going to be on Seattle's big board. If they line up this way, who knows, right? It never does, but it's always fun to speculate. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead.
Let's talk strategy with these trade backs for a minute. Because I think that I was just looking at mine, and I traded back twice. And I know with the 9th overall pick, you're thinking, okay, the Seahawks are going to, get a top 10 player. They're, the last time they picked in that range was Earl Thomas, and no, I've got them trading back twice, all the way down to 17.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity to grab a player, especially if one falls to 9 that you weren't expecting there. But sometimes that doesn't happen either, and so you've got to be able to act. I think picking up value in a team building type of situation that's the Seahawks are in, I think that's probably what we're going to see from John Schneider.
Yeah, until the last couple of years, John Snyder's always tried to get 10 players at least, and I think I ended up with 11.
I did too.
I moved back a couple of times. I picked up extra picks with the idea that at some point I'd want to move back up and get a guy who was falling, and then I just never did. So I ended up with 11 overall players.
Do you want to go through your trades really quick, just so people understand kind of the overarching idea?
I was thinking we'd kind of fit them in along with the picks.
We can do that.
So the first thing that happened is I traded 9, which is where the Seahawks currently sit, down to 13. So I dropped 4 places in the draft, but I picked up a 3rd round pick from the Browns and ended up getting round 3 pick 78, which, I mean, that's ended up being pretty good value, but that left me sitting there at 13 with the Browns pick. And then what was your trade? Because you were in the similar range.
I did a very similar situation. So we started at 9. I traded back to pick number 14 and picked up 3rd round 76 overall, and picked up 4th round 119. So I dropped back a couple additional spaces, which gave me an additional, the equivalent of an additional 5th round pick, basically, out of that move back. And I stayed there. I stayed at 14.
Yeah. So you picked up 4th round pick 119 for moving back an extra spot. And your 3rd round pick actually looked, what number was it?
76.
Yeah. And I was at, I'm at 78. So Yeah, I mean, you ended up getting better value there.
Well, and that just shows you just how valuable that 9th pick is. There's a lot of points there. I think on the Rich Hill trade value chart, well, you ended up at 217 and I ended up at 4, or not 217, at 17. I ended up at 14. The difference between 14 and 17, at 14, the trade value is at 325 points. At 17, it drops all the way to 296. For example, when you're in a 5th round spot, that value is at 12 points. So you can literally drop back just a few spots and pick up a ton of value. And that's why I think John Schneider does it.
Yep.
Okay. So that was my first trade. And I have another one later on down the road.
Yeah. And so I was sitting at pick 13, which would be we're just going to go back and forth as our picks come up. So the next pick that comes up it would be pick 13, which I have. And I moved back again. There were a couple of players that I was targeting. One, if I was willing to take, if he was sitting there at 13, he went 12. So I went ahead and go, okay, I believe the other guy that I want is going to be there a little bit later. So I dropped from 13 down to 17, again, 4 more slots. But doing that, I picked up another 3rd round pick, number 79, and I picked up a 4th round pick, number 123. But to make that work, I also gave up a 5th round pick. I gave up 153. So I traded away 13 and 153, got 17, 79 and 123.
Nice. Okay. And then we'll talk about the other trades in a little bit. So, so I'm up first. I was at pick 114 overall. When I was at 9, players like Amon Gardner were available still. And Garrett Wilson and Trayvon Walker was sitting there. And that was hard because Trayvon Walker, Jermaine Johnson was there. And I thought, okay, there's enough players still available where if I do drop back enough, I can still have at least 1 or 2 selections available. So when I got to that point, really the best player available on the board, in my opinion, was Trevor Penning. And so I selected Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa to be the left tackle of the future. It sounds like we're going to sign Trent Brown. It's Saturday when we're recording this. And if he's over at right tackle and they don't bring back Dwayne Brown, or even if they do, on some sort of low cost deal, Trevor Penning would still be a great selection here as we move forward. And he's just ready to go. Like he's going to start right away, so if they do select him, I don't know what's going on with Dwayne Brown. So, but that's the selection. I'm really happy with the value.
So I think that was a terrible pick, if I'm going to be honest. And I say that because 3 picks later at 17, I drafted Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa, the same exact player.
That's funny. And therefore you got better value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. It's all about the player more than the value. It is
about the player at that position. Yes.
Yep. And I think you get a left tackle of the future, and you can do that. Trent Brown becomes your right tackle, and you've now got 2 guys that you like in Jake Curran and Stone Forsythe as your backup tackles at left or right and left side there. So you end up really set at a position that coming into this offseason was a massive problem. And with the way this worked out between this free agent signing, which is about to happen, and this draft pick, I think you take a really important position and you just nail it down.
And we talked endlessly, tirelessly in the offseason, even during the season, about investing in the trenches. And, we, at some point, we had to kind of hold to that. And here was the opportunity. This is the hardest position to fill on the offensive line at a high level. And we just did it at a relatively low price, first round pick. And I think it's great. Good job. Okay. So the next pick is now in the 2nd round, the pick we got from the Denver Broncos in the Russell Wilson trade. So both of these first 2 selections were made possible by that trade. Whatever. It is done. It is what it is. I appreciate the draft capital now that I'm doing mocks, and of course, when we get to the draft day, it'll make for a lot of fun. So, what I decided to do is go defensive line with this pick. Perrion Winfrey was sitting out there. There were a number of other guys in that range that I liked, but including a couple of safeties. DeMarvin Leal, I think, was sitting there. Travis Jones, if you needed a space eater in the middle, depending on the way they want to roll out this scheme coming up. But I thought that defensive tackle, defensive end Logan Hall from Houston was a great value here. Just the scheme diversity he brings. He's a load. He's very heavy-handed. He's just a great pick. Had a tremendous Senior Bowl. I just really like the idea of having a 6'6", 283-pound guy. He's like Shelby Harris, so it provides a rotation. I think that it's a Rasheem Green replacement, essentially, is what we're looking at here. And he can slide inside, play the 3-tech.
Yep.
And I think that's just a great value pick at this spot in a position of that we've said that we're going to need to invest in, and we just did.
Yeah. So if the Seahawks truly are embracing, a 3-4 more, that's such a fantastic pick, because the defensive ends are just so hard to find, right? They're 280-pound guys that can be disruptive and do all the different things that they need a 280-pound guy to do. And so you were able to go and get one. And I like that pick. In my draft, he went pick 41.
Wow.
Yeah. So and the guys you mentioned, like Lewis Kine went 43, Travis Jones went 44.
Wow.
So
yeah.
you got
I got the guy that I wanted out of that group.
And so that worked really well. I went a different route with this. I went ahead and went with quarterback Kyler Gordon out of the University of Washington at cornerback. The Seahawks with Reed leaving and signing with the Jets, they're missing they have a big hole in their defensive backfield, and so getting a corner who can come in and plays the run well and but also is good in coverage and does all the things that they need. I liked this pick in terms of being able to go and get a guy that will really help the team now, but is a need that's a long-term need too.
Is he going to be able to press like Seattle might like to do this year, or is he more of a zone guy or a slot guy?
I think he naturally fitting. He's a slot guy, but so was Reed, right? And Reed turned out to be just what the team needed on the outside too.
Right.
Kyler Gordon is bigger. He's a little quicker than Reed. I think naturally he's a slot guy, so he can man up with the quicker guys, but he's a little bit bigger and can also cover on the outside. So I just think that a bit amount of scheme diversity allows them to move people around and match up as needed.
Nice. I like it. So I went in a different direction. I thought I've made the investment. Seahawk fans are going to appreciate that in the offensive line and the defensive line. So my next pick shouldn't bother them because it's a running back. Oops, that's your pick. This is my pick. Bill selects running back Breece Hall out of Iowa State. I selected him over Isaiah Spiller in my draft. They were the two top running backs on the board at this spot. There were, of course, a number of other picks that I could have gone in a different direction, at linebacker or safety, another edge. I could have invested in an interior lineman. But I just am not sure about Rashad Penny. Of course, he's not back with the Seahawks yet as of this recording. But even if he does come back, I don't know that Chris Carson is. I think that they may move on from Chris Carson as needed. And having a guy at the top end of the draft one of the best running backs in the draft, if not the best running back in the draft, Breece Hall, can do so much for you at 5'11", 217 pounds, ran a 4.3940 at that size with a 40-inch vertical and a 10.5 foot broad jump. Elite grade for the position. Next gen stats rates him at a 99 out of 100 elite grade. That's the highest grade in the draft. Now there's a few other players that get that grade, but to get that grade at a running back spot, to have that athleticism and speed and breakaway speed from basically anywhere on the field is a great pick at this spot, I think, and a value. Now you can say what you want about picking a running back this early, but I don't know that this is now early. I think this is a good spot to start picking some of your offensive weapons. And I'm telling you, if we have a quarterback situation this year where it's bringing somebody along or it's a vet placeholder, we're going to need that running game. We're going to need to ride that running game on certain games. And it's what Pete Carroll said he wants to do. He wants to be able to run the ball effectively and kind of lean on that a little bit, especially this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have people, it's too early, but you're in the 40s, and 2, it's your third pick, and you've already invested in your offense and defensive line. So I don't have a problem with it. At that spot at 241, I traded back. I went ahead and moved back to 45. So again, dropped back 4 places and got a 4th round pick 119.
Nice.
And so all told, I had picked up, 2/3 and 2/4 with my trade backs, because this is the last of my trades. And I gave up, to do that. The only pick that I gave up down at the bottom, that I threw in extra, was pick 153. So 2/3, 2/4. There's a lot of depth in this draft in that round. Getting as many picks in that 3rd and 4th round was something I really wanted to do. So there was that. And then my next pick was someone you mentioned earlier that you were thinking about picking at 40. I got him at 45, and that is defensive lineman Perrion Winfrey. He is a absolutely...
We've been talking about him for a while.
Yep. Absolute monster disruption guy on the interior of the defensive line. He will make the rest of the pass rushers, the edge rushers, better because the quarterback can't step up. He's not a guy that's going to be great against the run. We know that. If he was a guy that was great against the run, he'd be a top 10 pick. So if he's dropping to 45, he's got some deficiency. It is not in his ability to get after the quarterback. It's in his ability to stop the run. So he'll be more of a rotational guy at the 3 tech, but I don't care. The Seahawks need disruption up the middle. He's that. So
yeah, we have Al Woods, we have Poona Ford. They just re-signed Quentin Jefferson to come back onto the team to play at the 3 tech, so he can rotate in there with him. And that's a great selection. That's the future. Quentin Jefferson's not the future. Yeah. And so I love that pick. I mean, yeah, Seahawks fans would love these drafts, I think. Okay, so you're still up, Keith, because I traded back from 372, dropped back a couple of spots with the Atlanta Falcons, and I picked up a 5th round pick, 151 overall. So I did drop back to 74. So that's my next one. So you're up.
So my next pick down in round 3, pick 72. I went and got my running back. You got yours in the 2nd round at pick 41. I waited until the 3rd round, pick 72, to get Isaiah Spiller, the running back out of Texas A&M.
That's a great value right there.
He like Breece Hall is viewed as the best running back in the draft right now. Isaiah Spiller was viewed as the best running back in the draft for most of the draft process. And then recently, Breece Hall has been the guy that's kind of slid into that role. I don't care. I mean, he's got the size, the speed, the power, everything that Seattle wants as a running team. And to get him in the 3rd round, I felt was good value. And it allowed me to get, multiple guys at, that will help on the lines and at cornerback and everything first, and still get a difference maker at the position. So that was my pick at 72.
Yeah. So what you started with 8 picks, as you know, the Seahawks start with 8 picks. You ended up overall with 11. So you dropped back, you picked up 3 additional picks. You moved around to different spots, different levels of the draft. And so far, I think you're just totally nailing it. The running back spot at this spot, especially Spiller, is going to be great. Seahawks fans will love him as a guy that's willing to go in and completely finish off runs, run into people, blocking on pass protection, all that kind of stuff. So it's a great pick. So at 74, I took a guy that I've had my eye on for a while that has typically on big boards. He started when I first started looking at him, and we both did. He was in the about 110 range, and he's just been climbing and climbing up boards into the 80s. And so I kind of went up and got him a little bit. So not too far, but I wanted him on the team. And I selected cornerback Tariq Woolen out of University of Texas, San Antonio. And I just think that he's a little raw. He's going to need a little bit of development. This is a perfect spot in the draft to get him at this spot. You went and got Kyler Gordon. I've got my corner now at Tariq Woolen. I think he's good enough to be in the rotation, possibly end up starting by the mid-season type of a thing, a la Richard Sherman. And I think that he's only played corner for 2 years, but his athletic upside is just tremendous. 6'4", 205 pounds, ran a 4.26 40. 42-inch vertical, 33 and 5/8-inch arms. So he's long, lanky, physical. If it somehow doesn't work at corner for him, he still has the option to be a safety in the NFL.
Yeah, he is. Size-wise, he's Brandon Browner with a lot more speed.
Yeah.
And just a freaky athlete. I absolutely love that pick. I love the player. In my draft, he went 77th overall. So I picked Spiller at 72. Woolen went 77th. So he was a guy that I was considering there. And then I had picks at 78 and 79. Do you want to guess who I was targeting? With one of those 2 picks, it was Woolen, but he got sniped by the Vikings 1 pick before.
Interesting. So I didn't reach too much then. So I'm via my trade earlier in the first round, I picked up 76 overall, and this is the pick now. And so I just, there were a number of different ways you could go here. You could pick up another lineman, a linebacker, safety, wide receiver. I mean, there's a lot of value here at this spot, but I went ahead and picked up a linebacker that I thought would be able to come in right away and possibly even start. Troy Anderson, Montana State, just a real super athletic player. 6'3", 242, ran a 4.4 240, 36-inch vertical, tremendous athlete, elite sized player at that position, middle linebacker in a 3-4, comes in, fills the Bobby Wagner role, which, no one's going to do that. But this guy has the ability to kind of come along and do that, sideline to sideline speed, agility, fights through tackles, all that kind of stuff. He lacks, he came from Montana State, so he's going to need a little bit of time to diagnose. He's going to need to learn how to play defense at the NFL level, and that's going to slow him down initially, and before he can become a little bit more instinctual. And but he's got some good guys around him. Aaron Brooks is going to be a great player to learn from. So,
yeah, like the player, people are going to go, "Oh, Montana State, what?" Remember that Bobby Wagner went to Utah State, another tiny school. Linebacker is one of those positions where you can make a quick transition. Into the NFL. So I'm not as worried about that. So 2 picks after that, at pick 78, I got greedy. And I know that Trent Brown is probably signing with Seattle, but he is not a long-term solution at right tackle. I went and found my long-term solution at right tackle. I went and got Abraham Lucas out of Washington State, offensive tackle, which now gives the Seahawks 5 offensive tackles, which I know is weird because they drafted
Penning. You drafted Penning.
I got Penning. He'll be the day one starter at the left tackle. I do think Lucas will be swing starter at some point.
Now,
he instantly becomes the swing tackle at that point, pushing both Curran and Forsyth down the depth chart a little bit. But he also becomes the right tackle of the future. And I know you and I both like Curran, but Curran while he's a good run blocker, he is limited as a pass blocker. And
Lucas. I mean, geez. So Trent Brown is the antithesis of athletic as far as what I think they want to do in the Shane Waldron thing, which confounds me a little bit that they're going to toss probably some really decent money at Trent Brown to play right tackle for the Seahawks. I disagree with you in slightly, well, not even slightly, a lot, that Trent Brown is a short-term solution. I think they're going to probably give him like a 4-year deal. Now, the way that it's structured, it might end up being a 2-year deal. I don't know, but it's still probably going to be a significant amount of time. So Abraham Lucas is probably, if that whole scenario plays out, Abraham Lucas would be a guy that's going to be sitting for a while, which may or may not be great. I mean, he does need to build some functional strength, but that's really his only weakness.
But he's okay. Honestly, Trent Brown's contract is probably going to be a 4-year deal, but it's really a 2-year deal. But is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be a guy that's going to be out there?
That's a great point.
And so getting a guy that can come in and do it. And I also think that what you've got in Lucas is a guy that can move inside and play guard too. He's a guy that can back up at 4 of your 5 positions, and so having a guy like that on your roster is always useful. And like I said, I don't believe in Brown as a guy that's going to be there long term. I just don't. I think that Lucas gives them that.
Yeah, that injury stuff and throwing that kind of money at a guy like that. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's 6'7", 380 pounds. Trent Brown originally started with San Francisco, moved to New England, and they're letting him go. They had some issues with him as far as injuries and being available. And so now the Seahawks are going to take a shot. It sounds like. And so that'll be very interesting. I love the pick. I mean, I don't care if you went up a couple, a dozen picks or whatever to go get him. In fact, I would imagine most NFL teams will think like that and kind of put him squarely in the middle of the 3rd round. You're up again, Keith.
I'm because I had 2 picks in a row, which was a little weird. So the other player that I just went and got pure speed at linebacker, because in my head I'm moving Jordan Brooks inside to the middle linebacker, and I wanted some speed on the outside, or if they truly do go to a 3-4, a guy that can also be on the inside and just give the team just tremendous speed sideline to sideline with both Brooks and this player. So I went and got Channing Tindall out of Georgia to come in at linebacker and just really solify all of that. And I keep forgetting,
unbelievable.
I keep forgetting to click the little thing. So thanks for doing that.
I'll do it. Whatever. Dude, you just nailed these last couple picks. I mean, Channing Tindall, that's just great. So your last picks are Spiller, Lucas, and Tindall. Tindall's not going to be there in this draft. I don't think. He's there now, but he had a tremendous Senior Bowl game, championship game, and then he had his testing and at the combine, and he's just so fast and quick, natural middle linebacker, I think, but can play all over the place at linebacker because he drops back into coverage really well.
Yep.
It's just a great pick. I mean, he's probably going to end up being one of the best linebackers out of this draft, to be completely honest.
So. Yeah, I love the way he plays, and he plays with so much speed that I'm just like, this team needs to get faster.
Yes,
and
we've talked about that.
That is him getting faster. So go ahead.
Wow, nice. Okay, so we both pick it at 109. I'll go first. I went ahead and went back to the trenches on the interior offensive line. I think this is a great value pick at this spot for a center that's going to compete with our guy we just brought in. What's his name, Keith?
Blythe.
Yeah. And we'll see if he can come in and compete and take the job. If not, he's a guy that we just brought back, Fuller. I noticed on a minimum deal to be kind of a backup guy. He's not going to be a starter, but backup Blythe. And I think Cole Strange comes in and kicks him off the roster, which is good news.
Yeah, because Fuller is terrible. We saw that last year. He's not a guy that you want on the field. And I Strange, I like him. He's out of Chattanooga, so he's got some learning to do, but he's a guy that can come in and I don't know if he'll compete to be a starter, maybe not in year 1 or 2, but he's a guy that offers a lot more upside and is an instant improvement over Fuller as the backup center.
Yeah, he's great for his own scheme too. He's very athletic, 33-inch arms, run a 5.040. He's strong, 31 reps on the bench, 28-inch vertical for a lineman's great. 4.5 short shuttle. So, I just like it. He's also got some scheme diversity. So in a pinch, he can play guard.
Yep. So with my next pick, also at fourth pick, pick 109, I doubled up on linebacker because I see the Seahawks as having currently on the roster 2 guys that can start at linebacker. I like Barton, but I don't know if he's a guy that you want, especially as you go to a 3-4, which means your linebackers have to be able to fight through blocks a little more. And so I went and again got a guy with some speed, and with Brian Asamoah II out of Oklahoma. I think he's a guy that can come in and be that, basically be the 4th linebacker in a 3-4. And just do a lot of the little things that this team needs. Now, I don't think he's going to start day 1. I think they might
special teams though, dude. I mean, that guy's athletic.
Bring him along a little more slowly, just because do you really want 2 rookie linebackers starting in week 1? But I expect him to be a starter at some point during the season.
Here you go again. I mean, talk about adding value at that spot. I just think that's a home run hit right there, and a guy that can immediately come in and be one of your special teams aces on the team. And he just blew up the Senior Bowl. He was all over the place making plays all week. Everyone was talking about him. I mean, he just kind of made a name for himself there, and then tested at the combine. So at 6'2", 200 pounds, he's a little less than long, with 30 and 3/4-inch arms, but he ran a 4.33 40 with a 40-inch vertical. So that 3.94 short shuttle is elite for that size. So he's a good player. Yeah. All right. So at my next spot, I'm the next pick. So at 419, this is our native pick, correct? No, I got this from the Ravens. 419, right? I think so.
Yeah, we
both had we both traded the same pick.
Yeah, we both ended up with pick 119.
Okay. Okay. So I went ahead and doubled up at cornerback. You doubled up at linebacker. I doubled up at cornerback, and Zion McCollum was my pick from Sam Houston State at this spot. Our corner room is kind of empty. We're coming back off an injury on one player, and it just needs some infusion of young, fast talent. And Zion McCollum does that at 6'2", 200 pounds, 4.33 40. He's just a ball hawking type cornerback that has scheme diversity, so he can play in the slot for you, which is probably where he ends up. And he's just really shifty and fast and ideally suited for that spot. So he's not going to be on the outside. He's going to be in the slot.
Yeah. So, and then in that same slot, fourth round pick 119, I went and got Neil Farrell Jr. Out of LSU, and this is an interesting prospect because he's 6'4", 330. So you're looking at a guy that's a nose tackle, right, right up the middle of your defense. But then you go back and you start looking at his production from last year and realize he had 9.5 tackles for loss last year, and that is that means he's living in the backfield. He's pushing people.
And LSU's playing good teams. Good.
Oh yeah, they're in they're in the SEC, so they're playing good teams, and he's still living in the backfield. And so being able to bring him in and have him with the idea that he would be a potential nose tackle of the future. He played defensive end previous years, but it was more like a 5 tech. Then this last year they moved him into to the 3 tech and even at that size. So I just thought that it gave them some more athleticism and ability to push on the middle.
So what happens with the defensive line now with those additions and like a Brian Monet and stuff? Is this a guy that challenges Brian Monet for a spot, or Woods?
Absolutely.
I mean, Woods signed for a couple of years, but Monet might be susceptible.
Yeah, and Monet signed for next to nothing. You've got at this point they've got Poona Ford, Al Woods. Those are kind of their run stuffers. In this case, you would add Neil Farrell Jr. to the run stepping, and then Perry and Winfrey gives you that pass rusher, on that interior too. So, it ends up being a, I don't know. I thought if you're going to double up, offense and defensive line, the team has got to invest more in the trenches. I've doubled up at offensive tackle. I've now doubled up on defensive tackle. You can tell kind of where my focus was, in this draft. So,
yeah.
So the next 2 picks make me look really bad and make you look really good.
I had that earlier.
Because in the 4th round, pick 123, so just 4 picks after I picked Farrell, I went and added to the tight end room and got Greg Dulcich out of UCLA. Guy had an incredible Senior Bowl, just really kind of came on and showed that he belonged, in the NFL at the Senior Bowl. And I just like the way that they've got him now. They've traded for Noah Fant. They've re-signed Disley. Do they need a tight end? No.
Well, they have Parkinson too.
Yep. They don't need a tight end, but I like him. I like the fact
it's the value.
Yeah, he does everything. He plays with an edge. He's kind of mean. And so I went and got that pick. And then down at pick 151.
Yeah.
So almost 30 picks later in round 5, Bill picks.
He's sitting there. He's
same guy.
He's sitting there on the big board, and I wasn't going to pick a tight end because we solved that problem essentially, and we probably won't draft a tight end in the draft unless something like this happens, where you're at the back end of the 5th round and your guy's just sitting there that you valued at where you took him at 123 in the 4th round, and you just have to take the best player available at that spot and just get better. He could be on the rotation. It could force Kobe Parkinson to kind of go back onto the practice squad possibly, or get picked off. I would assume, but you get a better player that's more scheme diverse for your offense and give your budding new quarterback, and that's going to happen at some point, an opportunity to have a trio of tight ends that really all 3 are going to be able to catch the ball, move the chains, and that's your best friend. So I love that. Yeah. I love that pick. I really do.
Yes, I got him at the back end of the 4th round, which I actually thought was good value for him. And you got
it is good value, I think, in the draft.
You got him in the back end of 5th round. So.
Yeah, he's going in the 4th round, maybe even the 3rd round, depending on where the run and position group goes.
All right, so we've each got 2 picks left, which is a little odd in that we're still in round 5. We've got.
Yeah,
one of us. Yeah, so we're getting close to the end of our picks with still rounds to go. So the very next pick you picked, where you picked Dulcich at 152. I picked wide receiver Velus Jones out of Tennessee, guy with just electric speed. Absolutely just flies down the field.
4.3 240.
Yeah. And he's a guy that's going to come in, stretch the field. If teams are worrying about DK Metcalf and his ability to get behind him, well, you can't roll a safety to DK Metcalf's side because Velus Jones is going to also get behind your cornerbacks on the opposite side, and it'll allow a guy like Lockett a lot of space to work in the middle. So that was my pick at 152.
Nice. I went in a different direction, and we've been, I think the theme in this show is doubling up on position groups. And when you have 11 picks, sometimes you can afford to do that. And when you're really light on a position group, sometimes it makes sense. And that's where I came down with this pick. Zamir White out of Georgia. He's got low usage on the tires and just really showed out at the combine when he was one of the best, smoothest route runners, a guy that looked great in agility drills. He ran a 4.440 at 6 foot, 214 pounds with a 33-inch vertical and a 10.8 broad jump. He's kind of a weight room warrior, so he's completely chiseled. This is a guy that is a little different than Breece Hall earlier. Breece Hall is an in between the tackles guy, but he's also a burst guy and a guy that you can do outside zone stuff with and get him out into space. Zamir White is going to be more of a in between the tackles guy exclusively, short down back. And we lack that on the roster except for Chris Carson. I just don't know if Chris Carson's coming back or if he can come back. I know he's going to be seemingly medically cleared, but I'm not even sure if they keep him. They might even cut him for cap space in the next couple of weeks if the team decides that they need that money. So Zamir White doubling up here makes me feel better about the running back room going into the new year with Breece Hall, Zamir White. You've got DJ Dallas. That's a pretty decent group.
Yeah. So you're up next with the very next pick because you picked two picks in a row. And you got a guy that you're going to have to tell me about because honestly, I don't know anything about this player.
Yeah, so D'Angelo Malone is an edge player out of Western Kentucky, 6'3", 243 pounds, 33 and 8-inch arms. He's going to be kind of a strong side linebacker type. So he's going to be able to drop back into coverage. He's also going to be able to come up and rush the passer. Having picks, 3 picks in a row, essentially 151, 152, 153. This was just a value pick for me. I don't know that he's going to necessarily be there when the draft actually happens, but he's got just tremendous upside as far as playing bigger than his size. He's got active hands. He's a great tackler. He takes good angles. He really showed up at the Senior Bowl, and that's really where he caught my attention.
Cool. So with my next pick, I went and because we're down in the round 7, you and I both skipped round 6. There's no 6th round picks. I took a flyer on an athlete, and selected an edge player. So, like a Leo style defensive end. And
so you kind of had the same thought process I did.
Yep, Jeremiah Moon out of Florida. I don't know a ton about him as far as his tape, but I saw his measurables are really good. This guy is a 6'5", 250-pound guy who jumps out of the building. Great 3-cone broad jump shuttle. All of those. The one thing he didn't do is he ran a 4.76 40. So you're like, oh, maybe not. Fast enough to go over and play the strong side linebacker spot. But I'm not asking him to play linebacker. I'm asking him to be, the 7 tech, the Leo side defensive end. And I think with his explosiveness, that he can get up, get around the corner, and really do some things. And getting a guy like that in the 7th round, take a flyer on him. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, okay.
Yeah. Wow. And finding a really solid pass rush specialist at that point in the draft is just value upside. Guy can play special teams, all that stuff. I think it's a great pick. I did a similar thing, went in a different direction. You drafted Velus Jones earlier. I took my wide receiver here and Kevin Austin Jr. out of Notre Dame. I think this is a really undervalued player with a lot of upside. Didn't get a lot of playing time because of suspension and then some injury at Notre Dame. 6'2", 200 pounds, ran a 4.37 40, 39-inch vertical, 11-foot broad, 4.15 short shuttle. Just has a really nice frame where he can be physical. And I just, at this point, you're just looking for upside. And I think he brings that and gives you some special team stuff. Wow.
A lot of players for us to talk about.
How do you feel, Keith?
Tired.
I know.
There's a lot. There's a lot of going through guys, and
I don't want everyone. I don't want everyone to get confused. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, so that everyone kind of see what we did side by side.
Perfect for the audio portion of this.
I know, and I don't know if you can really see this. You're gonna have to have a bigger screen if you're watching it, maybe on your cell phone. I'm not sure if you're doing the YouTube version, but it kind of shows what we did together. Because when we talked about all those players, it almost seems like that's how many picks we ended up having for the entire team, and that's we kind of split that. So we each had 11 picks. The strategy was interesting. The where we got guys was interesting at different position groups and different spots. I liked your draft. It's funny because when I got your draft, you sent it to me via email early so that I could kind of prepare just a little bit. And then I drafted, and I thought, wow, these strategies and position groups and value overall was really similar, but you did come out a little bit on top. I went to the Rich Hill trade value chart and added up all of the pick point values, and you came out plus 12 over my value, which is equivalent to a 5th round pick.
Yeah.
So, and you basically did that by trading that extra 3 picks back in the first round. That's where all that value was attained for you.
Yep. I went into this wanting picks. I have that 3 picks in the 70s, the 2 just after, or 3 picks, between 109 and 123. There's some value pockets, and I wanted a lot of picks there. I kind of wish that I would have been able to there's a couple of guys at the very top that I kind of wanted, but I felt really comfortable moving down and getting Penning in there. But I was just looking at you're going to see, if you look over all of this, you're going to see a definite idea of what I did here. I got 2 offensive tackles. I got 2 defensive tackles. I got a defensive end, and I got a running back. I got a tight end. That is a lot of investment up front on both sides of the ball. And then I also got 2 linebackers, right? So that's guys in the front 7 on defense, offensive linemen. That's where my draft is. Yes, I threw in a cornerback, which is desperately needed, and a wide receiver in there. But my investment was getting better up front on both sides of the ball. And that didn't happen by mistake. That was definitely my strategy.
Yeah, I think we both ended up focusing on athleticism and speed where we could. And you mentioned the trenches. We both did that with Trevor Penning right up front, which I think is going to end up being one of the best tackles out of this draft in the long run, just because of his work ethic and the way that he plays, his demeanor. I kind of did the same thing. Went in the trenches with my first 2 picks. Then I kind of got I got a guy that's going to be able to be a weapon in Breece Hall, and then a physical corner that I think that we're lacking on this team, completely lacking. And so Tariq Woolen comes in and really adds that. And then I looked for value. After I got Tariq Woolen, wanted to get that, I went and just basically looked for value and filling out weaknesses on the roster, and I think getting Cole Strange there at the interior, and Dulcich were my value picks in that area.
So people that are listening or watching this will notice that neither of us took a quarterback. And
isn't that interesting?
I think it warrants an explanation from both of us. You'll know that I'm not enamored with this quarterback class. The only guy that fit in any of the spots I could have got him at 40 would have been Riddler, the guy out of Cincinnati. And honestly, I don't like him as a prospect. I think he's got a ton of athleticism, which is great, but his accuracy is suspect. His deep ball accuracy is very suspect. And he throws a lot of passes that are short, that are going to get picked off in the NFL. And I don't like him as a quarterback prospect. So that was an easy pass for me.
Yeah. And for the reason that you don't like him, I like him. Not because I don't dislike him. I don't like him, but I think Pete Carroll's going to like him. I think the type of offense that he was not able to run with Russell Wilson, because he kind of placated to Russell Wilson's skill set, which was throwing the ball deep and avoiding the middle of the field. Ritter does adequately. He can throw the ball. He can reach all levels of a defense. He's not going to be Russell Wilson with that moon ball, that deep ball, but he might be able to grow into that. But the intermediate and short game, he's really decent. And the accuracy thing, I think, is overstated slightly with that. And then the ability to just kind of be a point guard. Pete Carroll came right out and said it. We want a point guard. We want a game manager. That's all we want, because we're going to let our defense win and running game. Mm-hmm. And that's what Desmond Ritter gives you. And I think at 40 or 41, if Desmond Ritter's there and he's on the Seahawks board, he might be the best value at that spot for a quarterback to be able to come in and get behind a veteran placeholder for a year and learn the offense and then take over in 2023. That's just an option. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that kind of went into my thought process as well. He was not there in my draft. I think he got taken a couple picks earlier. And then Malik Willis was gone when I did my draft as well at 9. So he wasn't even an option.
Yeah, in my draft, Malik Willis went, he was the first quarterback off the board. He went 6th to Carolina, which I thought was interesting. And then with Ritter, I'm trying to find him again. He went 42 to the Colts, which is sandwiched in between my Kyler Gordon and Perry and Winfrey picks. And I wasn't sad to see him not there, so I didn't have to make that decision at 45.
I think the biggest thing, Keith, is that both of us were looking at roster building, not building around a quarterback that has too many deficiencies for a team that's not ready to compete at the highest level. So that was my overarching philosophy. That's why I came out of this thing. I could have, there was a couple guys. Carson Strong was there, and Zappe later. Where I could have picked one to develop.
It's not Billy Zapp. It's Zappe.
It might be Zapp. I don't know.
I don't either. He was a guy that was available, I think, in round 3 that I thought about, and then I'm like, no.
Right.
So
right, because I think that they're going to be able to solve that in free agency or a little trade here coming up to get a placeholder in for this year, and then you've got Drew Lock as a backup, and maybe they do Geno Smith. Who knows? But I just think that this draft, the way that it fell, the quality of players around the picks that you would have needed to spend at the quarterback position in this draft just wasn't worth it. And you had to go get a better player at a better value. And that's what happened with both of us. So anything else?
The only other thing would be, we just saw Deshaun Watson get traded to the Browns. I thought for sure he was going to Atlanta. It looked like that was guaranteed.
Yeah.
But then it ended up being the Browns. Baker Mayfield is now available for
Right.
Maybe
See,
nothing.
now that to me is a Pete Carroll quarterback, if I've ever seen one. I mean, coming out of USC, he liked Leinart, he liked Sanchez. This is Baker Mayfield. I mean, basically, it's a point. He's a little bit more than a point guard quarterback, but not much. Not the way that he's ended up playing so far in his career, and that's why he's going to be available. And they went out and traded for another quarterback. So he's a guy though that could come in and hand the ball off and do the short intermediate game for you, and really piss off a guy like DK Metcalf. But right, but nonetheless, I think he could get you 9 wins.
He's on the fifth year of his rookie contract.
I give up a conditional 3rd round pick. I'd say if he plays, 80% of the game starts and, whatever, then he gets a 3rd round. If not, if they take him to the playoffs or something, maybe they get a 2nd round pick or something for it. I don't know. Is that too much?
I think that's too much.
Do you think that's going to get it done with competition from Indianapolis?
Don't know. Don't care.
I know you don't, but we do. Would you rather go in with Drew Lock or Baker Mayfield into 2022 with this roster the way that we're building it?
I'd rather go in with Baker Mayfield. I think he's a better fit.
And why don't you care about the draft, or why don't you care about the competition with Indianapolis? If you think that we need to get Baker Mayfield, because I'm just saying, I would rather. But is he a big enough upgrade over Drew Lock to give up the draft capital necessary to get him? If Indy is like all in and they're like, no, we want this guy, let him have him. I'm not getting into a bidding war over a mediocre player. We just saw in our trade backs that we could drop back 4 or 5 picks and pick up a 3rd round pick in this draft. That would be the draft capital that you would need to get Baker Mayfield. And
I'd rather have the 3rd round pick.
Really?
Yeah. See, for me,
I don't think so.
When you say a conditional pick, it's not in this draft. It would have to be in the next draft, right? So therefore, it becomes. It does become a little easier but for me, it's 3rd round pick is the maximum. And if he takes the team to the playoffs, or hit certain stats things, if he doesn't do that, it drops to a 4th or maybe even a 5th.
And he's $18 million against your cap this year, unless you kind of restructure that.
And that's the thing, is you're also trading it for a guy on the last year of his deal. So you get stuck in a position where you're trading for a 1-year rental, or you're
doing something ridiculous like extending him.
Yeah, and giving him a boatload of money. And why would you do that? That's why I'm like, if Indy wants him, they can have him.
Would you take Marcus Mariota, who's available for no trade compensation, over Baker Mayfield?
Sure. I bring him in and let him and Locke compete. Winner gets the starting job.
Maybe that happens if Seattle loses out on Baker Mayfield. I do know from reports that Seattle is in the competition to get him. Yeah. If they lose that competition, maybe Marcus Mariota would be not a bad consolation prize.
I mean, Mariota's not good. We know that. Neither is Drew Lock.
But if he plays within the structure of Seattle's offense, he could be Jared Goff, if all I care. I mean, he doesn't have to be that dynamic player that he was at Oregon. Yeah. And when he first started in the league, if he contracts a little bit and just plays within the scheme, I think that you could turn almost any of these quarterbacks into at least a placeholder for a year, maybe even Drew Lock.
Yeah, and I mean, Drew Lock's thing is he likes to throw it deep. He'll throw it deep on every play.
But you know what? If we're doing all this dink and dunk stuff and underneath stuff and running the ball, and then we take our shot once in a while, I'm okay with Drew Lock doing that. I'd like to see it before I make the final call, but nonetheless, cool. This was a fun show. Lots of players to talk about.
Really fun show. I love these shows.
So we'll get this thing out, obviously, if you're listening to it. And if you have any comments, leave comments. We like to have comments on our YouTube channel. Those are always fun. I think that we had a last comment that we had from our last show was the idea that we were just constantly negative, and he hated it. That was, and I looked at the comment and I was like, we were really we turned out pretty positive out of that Russell Wilson scenario. And the first week of free agency, we didn't really kind of like go down any dark holes or anything like that. So I didn't know exactly where that was coming from, but it's comments like that though that keep us going.
Yep. Because that's what we are. We are the most negative people in the Seahawks universe. We're just nothing but cynical old farts sitting here complaining about everything. That is our brand, right, Bill?
Mm-hmm.
No, not at all. In fact, if anything, you and I are usually a little too rose-colored glasses on some of the things.
And I kind of like it that way. It just turned up turning out that way with you and I. When we first started, we didn't know exactly what it was going to be like, the dynamic of two people coming back and forth and so forth. And I really like the way that it's turned out, because I don't think it's over the top, but I do think it focuses on the good things about football, the good stories, the good play, we're not harping on players. We're not talking about negative plays all the time. If we do, it's in passing, and we just kind of move on quickly and we focus on the good stuff. If you want to say that that's optimistic or homerish or whatever, whatever. I mean, whatever. I think it's we have enough listeners, so it doesn't matter. All right. Follow Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at NW Seahawks. Show is at Hawks Playbook on Twitter. SeahawksPlaybook.com has all the stuff. Find us on your favorite podcast platforms, and especially YouTube. We're trying to grow that channel. If you can follow us on YouTube and subscribe, share it with your friends, that would be awesome. Until next time, go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.